a remarkable achievement. The XK engine, an absolute marvel of engineering. Around about 1943, they started designing and experimenting with it. It was limited, quite typical of British engines at the time. They were limited for tax reasons. You paid tax on the size of the bore in the cylinders, not the size of the engine. So you ended up with what's called an under-square engine. So the stroke was very long, that the piston travelled up and down inside the cylinder, but the bore was quite small. So if you imagine a P going up and down a tube, that's a bit of an extreme exaggeration, but as opposed to the Italian engines of the era and the German engines to a certain extent, where they weren't taxed on the bore size, they were taxed on the actual size of the cylinders or the power output, and that meant that they could be more over square, so shorter stroke and larger bore. And one of the contributing factors to this was the cylinder head is made of aluminium alloy. It's actually Rolls-Royce again, because of the Schneider Trophy, the racing planes of the 1920s and early 30s. Rolls-Royce had to come up with some very high performance engines to win that, and they gained a lot of experience about bearing materials, different alloys. They came up with what's called the triple metal engine shell bearing, which is copper lead with a layer of indium over the top, which are still used in high performance engines to this day. And the cylinder head on this is made out of one of Rolls-Royce's alloys called RR50, which was originally used as a piston material. The British pioneered aluminium pistons in engines, which are now pretty well universal. All that time ago in sort of racing engines and military engines, and they specified that alloy for the cylinder head. It worked ever so well. This engine was almost indestructible in spite of its long stroke, which means everything was having to do more work instead of a shorter stroke. Piston velocities were higher, etc. But it didn't matter. This engine was an absolute gem, and it's still being tuned and stretched to this day up to 4.7 litres and big power outputs now, well over 300 brake horsepower, considering that this engine was first launched to the public in 1948. I can't imagine there are many engines in the world that were literally almost unchanged for 44 years and still powered racing cars and road cars. It was as smooth and refined as it was powerful and tractable.